Chapter 1. The Scent of Blood and Secrets. The rain came down in sheets, turning the forest road into a slick ribbon of mud and danger. Elena Graves gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles white against the worn leather as her ancient sedan skidded around another curve. She should have stayed in the motel. Should have waited out the storm like any sensible person fleeing their entire life would do, but sensible had stopped being an option 3 days ago when she'd walked in on her fiancé and her sister tangled together, in sheets that still smelled like Elena's lavender. Detergent, just keep driving, she whispered to herself, blinking back tears that had nothing to do with the rain. Keep moving. Don't look back. The mountains of Blackpine Territory had seemed like the perfect place to disappear. Remote, forgotten, exactly the kind of nowhere that people like her could vanish into. The rental listing had been almost too good to be true. A cabin, fully furnished, asking price so low it bordered on suspicious. But Elena had stopped caring about suspicious. Suspicious was better than destroyed. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder. Another message from Marcus, probably. Another apology. Another excuse. Another promise that it didn't mean anything. She'd blocked him twice already, but he kept finding ways through. That was Marcus, persistent, charming, always knowing exactly how to slip past her defenses. Not anymore. The deer appeared out of nowhere. Elena's scream caught in her throat as she wrenched the wheel hard to the right. The car spun, tires shrieking against wet asphalt, and for one heart-stopping moment, she was weightless, suspended between the road and the ravine. Then gravity remembered her, and the sedan plunged sideways into the ditch. The impact drove the breath from her lungs. Metal crunched. Glass shattered. Her head cracked against something hard, and the world exploded into stars and darkness and the copper taste of blood in her mouth. When she came to, the rain was still falling, drumming against the crumpled roof of her car with relentless fingers. Every part of her hurt. Her temple throbbed with each heartbeat, and when she touched her forehead, her fingers came away sticky and red. No, no, no. Elena fumbled with her seatbelt, panic rising in her chest. The car was tilted at a dangerous angle, passenger side buried in mud and brush. Her phone had disappeared somewhere in the chaos, and the door wouldn't budge no matter how hard she pushed. She was trapped. The temperature was already dropping, and her thin jacket, bought for city autumns, not mountain storms, offered almost no protection. Elena tried the door again, throwing her shoulder against it, but pain lanced through her arm and she cried out, falling back against the seat. That's when she heard it. A sound that didn't belong in the storm. Low and rumbling like distant thunder, but closer, much closer, and getting closer still. Through the cracked windshield she saw movement, something large and dark, circling the wreckage of her car with predatory grace. Elena's breath caught. A bear, a wolf. The creature moved into a patch of moonlight breaking through the clouds, and her heart nearly stopped. It was massive, easily the size of a small horse, with fur so black it seemed to absorb the darkness around it. But it was the eyes that froze her in place. They glowed with an impossible amber light, intelligent and piercing, fixed directly on her bleeding face. This was no ordinary wolf. Elena pressed herself back against the seat, every survival instinct screaming at her to run, to hide, to do anything but sit there like prey while this monster decided whether she was worth eating. But there was nowhere to go. The car was her cage, and she was bleeding. And the wolf was right there, so close she could see the rain streaming off its midnight fur. The creature lowered its massive head to the broken window, nostrils flaring. It inhaled deeply, and the sound it made was almost human. A rumble of recognition, or perhaps surprise. Please, Elena whispered, though she didn't know what she was begging for. Mercy, a quick end? Please, I don't... The wolf's eyes met hers, and something passed between them. Something that made her breath catch for entirely different reasons. There was intelligence in that gaze, ancient and knowing and almost concerned. Then it turned and melted back into the forest. Elena sat in the wreckage, shaking, trying to convince herself she'd imagined the whole thing. Shock could cause hallucinations, couldn't it? Head injuries could make you see things that weren't real, but she could still smell it. Wild and earthy and distinctly animal. could still feel the weight of that impossible stare. She didn't know how long she sat there, bleeding and cold and alone. Time had stopped meaning anything, but eventually she heard another sound. Footsteps. Human footsteps. Hello? The voice was deep, masculine, rough with something that might have been concern or suspicion. Is someone in there? A face appeared at the window. A man's face, beautiful in a way that seemed almost dangerous. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair plastered to his head by rain, and eyes that were... Elena's breath stopped. Amber. His eyes were amber. You're hurt. He was already working at the door, wrenching it open with a strength that should have been impossible. Don't move. I've got you. There was a wolf, Elena managed, her words slurring slightly. Everything was starting to blur at the edges. A huge wolf, black. It was right here. Something flickered across the stranger's face. Too quick to identify, gone before she could focus. You hit your head pretty hard, he said, his tone careful. Sometimes trauma can make us see things, but when he reached in to help her out of the car, Elena caught his scent. Wild and earthy and distinctly familiar. Rain, pine, and something else. Something animal. Who are you? She whispered as he lifted her into his arms with impossible ease. The stranger's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he might not answer. Then he looked down at her with those burning amber eyes, and Elena knew with sudden, terrifying certainty that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't begin to understand. My name is Kieran, he said quietly. Kieran Blackthorne. And you, little human, have just stumbled into territory you were never meant to find. The world tilted sideways, and Elena's last conscious thought as darkness claimed her was simple and absolute. Those eyes. I know those eyes. I've seen them before, in The Wolf. Chapter 2. Sanctuary and Suspicion. Elena woke to warmth and the scent of cedar. For a disoriented moment, she thought she was home. Her real home. Before Marcus, before the betrayal, when life still made sense. But the ceiling above her was wrong. Rough-hewn beams instead of smooth drywall, and the light filtering through the windows was softer, gentler, like sunrise through old glass. She tried to sit up, and pain exploded through her skull. Easy. The voice came from somewhere to her left, and Elena's heart jumped. You've got a concussion. Moving too fast is a bad idea. Kieran Blackthorne sat in a leather chair by the window, his posture deceptively relaxed. In daylight, he was even more striking than she remembered, all sharp angles and controlled power, like a predator pretending to be civilized. He'd changed out of his wet clothes into dark jeans and a thermal shirt that did nothing to hide the lean muscle beneath. Elena's hand went instinctively to her forehead, finding clean bandages where the blood had been. Someone had tended her wounds. Someone had undressed her down to her underwear and tank top, and tucked her under heavy quilts that smelled like pine and something indefinably masculine. Where am I? Her voice came out hoarse, wary. My home. Kieran's amber eyes tracked her every movement with unnerving focus. About 5 miles from where you crashed? I couldn't leave you in that car. The storm only got worse after I found you. You carried me 5 miles? Something flickered in his expression. The terrain isn't easy, but I know these mountains well. Elena pulled the quilt higher, suddenly hyper-aware of how vulnerable she was. Alone in a stranger's cabin, injured, with no phone and no way to call for help. Every true crime podcast she'd ever listened to screamed warnings in the back of her mind, but he'd also saved her life. Thank you, she said carefully, watching his reaction. For helping me, but I should probably get to a hospital. Get my head checked out properly. Nearest hospital is 3 hours away, and the roads are still flooded. Kieran stood, moving with a fluid grace that set off alarm bells Elena couldn't quite name. I called the local clinic. Doc Morrison will be here in an hour to examine you. He's good, retired Army medic. You're safe here. Safe. The word felt strange on her tongue. She hadn't felt safe in months, maybe years. Definitely not since she'd walked into her apartment and heard her sister's laugh coming from her bedroom, breathy and familiar in all the wrong ways. I don't even know you, Elena said, and hated how small her voice sounded. Kieran's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. No, you don't. He moved toward the door, then paused. There's clean clothes in the dresser. Might be too big, but they're warm. Bathroom's through that door. I'll make breakfast. He left before she could respond, closing the door with careful precision. Elena sat in the sudden silence, her mind racing. Something about Kieran Blackthorne didn't add up. The way he moved, too smooth and too controlled. The impossible strength it would have taken to carry her 5 miles through mountain terrain in a storm. And those eyes. The wolf had those same eyes. She shook her head, immediately regretting it as pain spiked through her temples. Ridiculous. She'd hit her head. She was in shock. There was no such thing as a wolf the size of a horse, and even if there were, it couldn't possibly have been the same person who... A knock on the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "It's me," Kieran called. "I'm leaving food outside the door. You need to eat something before Morrison gets here." Elena waited until his footsteps retreated before getting up, moving slowly to minimize the throbbing in her head. The clothes in the dresser were indeed too large, flannel shirts and soft sweats that hung off her frame, but they were clean and warm and smelled like him. That same wild, earthy scent that made something in her chest tighten with recognition. The food outside the door was simple but perfect. Scrambled eggs, toast, fresh berries, and coffee that smelled like heaven. Her stomach reminded her she hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, and she carried the tray to the bed, eating mechanically while her mind churned. Through the window, she could see endless forests stretching in every direction. No other houses, no signs of civilization. Just trees and mountains and the morning mist clinging to the valleys like secrets. She was completely isolated with a man she didn't know, and yet, she didn't feel afraid. Not the way she should have. There was something about Kieran that felt almost familiar, like a song she'd heard in a dream. Dangerous, yes. Unsettling, absolutely. But not threatening. Not to her. Why not to me? A soft scratching sound drew her attention to the window. Elena's breath caught. A fox sat on the porch railing, rust-red fur gleaming in the morning light. It stared at her with intelligent black eyes, head tilted as if studying her. Then, as if satisfied with what it saw, it leaped down and trotted toward the tree line. But before it disappeared, it looked back once more. And Elena could have sworn, absolutely sworn, that it nodded. "Okay," she whispered to the empty room. "Either I have a serious concussion, or there's something very strange about this place." The door opened without warning, and Elena yelped, sloshing coffee onto the quilt. Kieran stood in the doorway, tension radiating from every line of his body. His nostrils flared slightly, and his eyes, those impossible amber eyes, locked onto hers with laser focus. "You're bleeding again," he said, his voice rough. "The bandage on your temple." Elena touched her forehead, finding the gauze damp with fresh blood. "It's fine. I just moved too fast." "It's not fine." He crossed the room in 3 long strides, and suddenly he was right there, so close she could feel the heat radiating off his skin. "You could have torn the stitches. You gave me stitches. Morrison walked me through it over the phone. You were unconscious. You needed..." He trailed off, jaw clenching as he carefully peeled back the bandage. His fingers were gentle, almost reverent, but Elena didn't miss the way his hands trembled slightly when they brushed her skin. This close, she could see details she'd missed before. The faint scars along his knuckles, the way his pupils dilated when he looked at her, the muscle jumping in his jaw as he worked, as if he was holding himself under rigid control. "Why are you really here?" Kieran asked suddenly, his eyes still fixed on her wound. "In Blackpine. Nobody comes here by accident." Elena's throat tightened. "I'm running away." "From what?" "From everything." The honesty surprised her. Maybe it was the concussion. Maybe it was the way his hands steadied her, so careful despite their strength. "From a man who betrayed me. From a life that turned out to be a lie. From being the kind of person who didn't see it coming." Kieran's hands stilled. When he looked at her, something in his expression had shifted. Softened, just slightly. "The mountains are good for that," he said quietly. "Running away, starting over, becoming someone new. Is that what you did?" His smile was bitter and brief. "Something like that." "What are you running from?" For a long moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he secured the fresh bandage and stepped back, putting careful distance between them. "Myself," Kieran said, and failing at it spectacularly. Before Elena could respond, a sharp whistle echoed from outside. Kieran's entire body went rigid, his head snapping toward the window with predatory alertness. "Stay here," he commanded, already moving toward the door. "Don't leave this room, no matter what you hear." "Kieran, what?" But he was already gone, the door closing behind him with ominous finality. Elena sat frozen on the bed, her heart hammering. Through the window, she saw Kieran emerge onto the porch, his posture transformed. No longer the careful caretaker, but something else entirely, something wild. And from the forest came an answering howl that raised every hair on her body. Chapter 3. Wolves at the door, Elena pressed herself against the window frame, her breath fogging the glass as she watched Kieran face the forest. 3 figures emerged from the tree line, 2 men and a woman, all moving with that same predatory grace that Kieran possessed. They were dressed in ordinary hiking clothes, but there was nothing ordinary about the way they carried themselves, like warriors, like hunters. The woman reached Kieran first, and Elena's stomach clenched unexpectedly at the easy familiarity between them. She was beautiful in a wild, untamed way. Auburn hair in a messy braid, athletic build, and even from this distance, Elena could see the challenge in her stance. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but body language spoke volumes. The woman gestured sharply toward the cabin, toward Elena. Kieran's response was immediate and unmistakable. He positioned himself between them and the house, his shoulders squared, radiating warning. "He's protecting me," Elena realized. But from what? One of the men, tall, blonde, with a scar cutting through his eyebrow, laughed at something Kieran said. But it wasn't a friendly sound. It was mocking, derisive. He took a step toward the cabin, and Kieran moved to block him. What happened next made Elena's blood run cold. Kieran didn't just move. He transformed his stance in a way that seemed impossible, suddenly larger, more dangerous, radiating an authority that made even the scarred man step back. For just a moment, Elena could have sworn she saw something flash in Kieran's eyes. Something that glowed amber gold in the morning light. The woman grabbed the scarred man's arm, pulling him back. More words were exchanged, heated and tense. Then the 3 visitors melted back into the forest as silently as they'd come. Kieran stood there for a long moment, his back to the cabin, shoulders rigid with tension. When he finally turned around and caught Elena watching through the window, something painful flickered across his face. He returned to the room slowly, as if giving her time to prepare herself. When he opened the door, his expression was carefully neutral, but Elena could see the storm behind his eyes. "Friends of yours?" she asked, pleased when her voice came out steady. "Pack?" Kieran said, then seemed to catch himself. "I mean people from town. They heard about the accident. Wanted to make sure you were—" He trailed off, running a hand through his dark hair. "It's complicated. That woman didn't look like she wanted to make sure I was okay." Elena kept her tone light, but her heart was racing. "She looked like she wanted to throw me off the mountain." Kieran's lips twitched despite himself. "That's Sasha. She's protective of this territory. We don't get many outsiders in Blackpine." "Why not?" "Because we like it that way." He moved to the dresser, pulling out a heavier sweater. Doc Morrison called. "The roads are worse than we thought. Flooding took out the bridge on Route 7. He can't get here until tomorrow at the earliest." Elena's stomach sank. "So I'm stuck here. You say that like it's a prison." Kieran's voice had an edge. "I'm not keeping you captive, Elena. You're injured and you need rest. That's all this is." But it wasn't all, and they both knew it. The air between them felt charged with unspoken things, heavy with secrets that pressed against Elena's consciousness like a forgotten word on the tip of her tongue. "The wolf," Elena said suddenly. "Last night before you found me. It was real, wasn't it?" Kieran went very still. "You hit your head. Don't." Elena stood up, ignoring the throb in her temples. "Don't treat me like I'm hysterical. I know what I saw. That wolf was huge, massive, and it looked at me like it understood me, like it knew me. Concussions can cause—" It had your eyes, Kieran. The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Kieran's expression was unreadable, but Elena caught the subtle shift in his breathing, the way his hands curled into fists at his sides. "You should rest," he said finally, his voice carefully controlled. "We can talk about this later when I'm what? Less crazy? Less observant?" Elena took a step toward him, surprised by her own boldness. Maybe it was the concussion. Maybe it was 3 days of rage at Marcus, at her sister, at every person who'd ever lied to her. "I've spent the last year ignoring my instincts because someone told me I was paranoid, that I was seeing things that weren't there, and I was wrong to listen to him." Something in Kieran's expression cracked. "Elena, my fiancé was sleeping with my sister for 6 months," she continued, the words spilling out before she could stop them. 6 months. And everyone around me knew. They all knew. But I was supposed to be the crazy one for asking questions, for trusting my gut. "You're not crazy," Kieran said quietly, and the gentleness in his voice nearly undid her. "Then tell me the truth." Elena closed the distance between them, tilting her head back to meet his eyes. "Tell me what you are. Because I know that you're not just some random guy who happened to find me in the woods." Kieran looked down at her, and Elena watched emotions war across his face. Fear, longing, something that looked almost like pain. "The truth would terrify you," he said. "Finally, I'm already terrified." Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. "I've lost everything. My home, my family, the future I thought I had. Nothing you could tell me would be worse than what I've already survived." His hand came up, almost involuntarily, to cup her cheek. His palm was warm, calloused, and Elena found herself leaning into the touch despite every rational warning screaming in her head. "You have no idea what you're asking," Kieran murmured. His thumb traced the edge of her bandage with infinite care. "Once you know, there's no going back. Your life will never be the same." "Good," Elena said fiercely. "I don't want it to be the same." The same was a lie. Kieran studied her for a long moment, searching her face for something Elena couldn't name. Whatever he found there seemed to settle something in him, because his expression shifted, resolve replacing hesitation. "All right," he said, "but not here. Not like this. If I'm going to show you what I am, you need to be strong enough to run if you have to." "Run from what?" His smile was sad and beautiful and terrible. "From me." Before Elena could respond, another howl split the air, closer this time, and answered by 2 more from different directions. Kieran's head snapped toward the window, his entire body going tense. "They're circling," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "Damn it, Sasha, not now. What's happening?" Kieran turned back to her, and for the first time, Elena saw real fear in his eyes. Not for himself, for her. "The pack is testing me," he said. "They want to know why I'm protecting a human, why I'm keeping you here instead of sending you away. And if I can't give them a good reason..." He trailed off, jaw clenching. "What happens if you can't?" Kieran's hand was still on her face, and his fingers tightened slightly. Protective. Possessive. "Then I'll have to make a choice, between keeping you safe and keeping the peace." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. "Which would you choose?" The look he gave her was answer enough. Fierce and certain and completely insane given that they'd known each other less than 12 hours. "You," Kieran said simply. "I'd choose you. Every time, and that's exactly the problem." Before Elena could process those words, their weight, their impossible implications, the front door crashed open downstairs. "Kieran." Sasha's voice rang through the cabin, sharp with authority. "We need to talk now and bring the human. The Alpha wants to meet her." Kieran's eyes flashed pure gold, and Elena gasped. "Stay behind me," he growled, and the sound was barely human. "No matter what happens, stay behind me." Then he moved toward the door and Elena followed, her whole world tilting on an axis she'd never known existed. Everything was about to change. And despite the terror coursing through her veins, part of her whispered, "Finally." Chapter 4. The Alpha's command, Elena's legs felt like water as she descended the stairs behind Kieran, one hand gripping the railing, the other pressed against the wall for balance. The concussion made everything slightly surreal. Edges too sharp, sounds too loud, and the tension radiating from Kieran's body almost visible in the air between them. Sasha stood in the center of the living room, flanked by the two men from earlier. Up close, she was even more intimidating, all lean muscle and coiled energy, with eyes that assessed Elena like a predator calculating the weakness of prey. "So this is the human who's caused all the fuss," Sasha said, her voice dripping with disdain. "She doesn't look like much." "Sasha." Kieran's voice was low, warning. He positioned himself between Elena and the others, and she noticed how he angled his body, not just protective, but defensive, as if expecting an attack. The Alpha summoned her. "We're going, but you don't speak to her that way again," the scarred man laughed. "Listen to him. One night with a pretty human and he's forgotten every rule we have." He looked past Kieran to Elena, his smile cruel. "Tell me, little girl, do you have any idea what you've stumbled into?" "Garrett, enough." The third member of their group spoke for the first time, a quieter man with dark skin and intelligent eyes. "Kieran's right. The Alpha wants to meet her. That's all that matters right now." "That's not all that matters, Isaiah," Sasha snapped. She took a step closer to Kieran, dropping her voice. "She's bleeding, Kieran. Fresh blood. Do you have any idea how that smells to the younger ones? How hard it is for them to control themselves around an injured human, which is why I'm keeping her here where it's safe." "Safe?" Garrett barked another laugh. "You really think you can protect one fragile human against the whole pack? Against instinct? You're not thinking with your head, brother. You're thinking with—" Kieran moved so fast Elena barely saw it. One moment he was standing in front of her. The next he had Garrett pinned against the wall, forearm pressed against the other man's throat. The violence of it made Elena's heart stop. "Finish that sentence," Kieran growled, and there was something inhuman in his voice, something that resonated in Elena's bones. "Please, give me a reason. Kieran, stand down." Isaiah's command was quiet but firm. This isn't helping. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Kieran released Garrett with a shove and stepped back, his chest heaving. When he glanced at Elena over his shoulder, she saw the conflict in his eyes, the struggle to maintain control. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though she wasn't sure what she was apologizing for. For being here, for being human, for causing whatever this was. Something in Kieran's expression softened. "You have nothing to be sorry for." How touching. Sasha's voice was acid. "But we're wasting time. The Alpha is waiting, and you know how he feels about being kept waiting." She turned to Elena, and there was something almost like pity in her eyes. "Put on something warmer, human. Where we're going, you'll need it." 20 minutes later, Elena found herself walking through the forest, surrounded by people who moved through the wilderness like they were born to it, which, she was beginning to suspect, they were. Kieran stayed close to her side, steadying her when she stumbled over roots, his hand a constant presence at the small of her back. She was wearing his jacket, too large, smelling of pine and something distinctly him, and despite everything, she felt safer than she had in months. "Where are we going?" she asked quietly. "The heart of Blackpine Territory," Kieran replied. "Where the pack gathers. Where the Alpha rules. And this Alpha? What does he want with me?" Kieran's jaw tightened. "To decide whether you're a threat. Whether you can be trusted to keep our secrets. Whether—" He trailed off. "Whether I live or die." He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. Around them, Sasha and the others continued ahead, giving them a moment of privacy. "I won't let anything happen to you," Kieran said fiercely. "I swear it. But Elena, you need to understand. What you're about to see, what you're about to learn, it's going to change everything. And once you know, the Alpha has to make sure you won't expose us." Expose you as what? But Elena already knew. Had known, really. Since the moment she'd seen that impossible wolf in the rain. Since she'd looked into Kieran's amber eyes and recognized them. "You're werewolves. All of you." Kieran closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them again, there was relief mixed with fear. Yes, the word hung in the air between them. Confirmation of the impossible. Validation of every fairy tale and nightmare rolled into one. Elena should have run, should have screamed, should have done anything except what she did, which was step closer to him and say, "Show me." "What?" "You said you'd show me what you are. Show me, please, before we get there, before I meet this alpha. I want to see. I want to know." Kieran stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "Elena, the transformation isn't... It's not pretty. It's painful, violent, and seeing it might..." "I've spent my whole life being protected from ugly truths," Elena interrupted. "Being told I was too fragile, too sensitive, too naive to handle reality. And look where that got me. I'm done being protected. I want the truth, Kieran. All of it." Something blazed in his eyes. Admiration, maybe, or recognition. "You're not like other humans," he said softly. "Apparently, you're not like other humans either." That startled a laugh out of him, brief and genuine. Then his expression turned serious. "All right, but stay back. And remember, no matter what you see, it's still me. I would never hurt you." He stepped away from her, into a shaft of sunlight filtering through the trees. For a moment he just stood there, breathing deeply. Then he began to undress. Quick, efficient movements that spoke of long practice. Elena's face heated, but she didn't look away. Couldn't look away. Kieran's body was a map of scars. Long silver lines across his ribs, a starburst pattern on his shoulder. The evidence of a violent life, of battles fought and survived. "This is going to be fast," he warned. "Don't run. Running triggers instinct." Then he dropped to his knees and began to change. Elena had imagined transformation 100 ways, slow morphing, magical shimmer, Hollywood special effects. The reality was nothing like that. Kieran's body convulsed. His back arched, and she heard the sickening crack of bones reshaping, reforming. His skin rippled like water, and dark fur erupted across his body in waves. His face elongated into a muzzle, teeth lengthening into fangs. His hands became paws, massive, clawed, deadly. The sound he made was agony and ecstasy mixed together, barely human and entirely animal. It took less than 30 seconds. Where Kieran had knelt, a wolf now stood. The same wolf from last night, massive and midnight black, with those burning amber eyes that saw straight through to her soul. Elena's breath came in short gasps. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to get away from the predator that could tear her apart with one snap of its jaws. But she didn't run. Instead, she took a step forward. The wolf's ears flicked back, surprise evident even in its animal form. It lowered its head slightly, waiting, watching. "It's you," Elena whispered. "It was always you." She extended her hand, slowly, carefully, the way she'd seen people do with dogs. The wolf regarded her hand like it was something precious and dangerous all at once. Then with infinite gentleness, it pressed its massive head against her palm. The fur was softer than she'd expected. Warm. Real. "You saved me," Elena said, tears suddenly streaming down her face. "Last night. You found me. You stayed with me until you could be human again. Until you could carry me to safety." The wolf, Kieran, made a sound low in its throat. Not a growl. Something else. Something that sounded almost like a whimper. Then, in another explosion of reformation, he was changing back. Bones snapping, fur receding, until Kieran knelt in the dirt again, gasping, human, vulnerable. Elena dropped to her knees beside him, not caring about propriety or boundaries. She pulled his jacket off and draped it over his shoulders, her hands shaking. "Thank you," she said, "for trusting me with this." Kieran looked up at her, and the expression on his face was raw. "You didn't run. No, you should have. Probably." Elena's hand found his, squeezing tight. "But I'm tired of running from the truth, Elena. Kieran." Sasha's voice shattered the moment. "Get dressed, now. The Alpha's patience is wearing thin." Kieran stood quickly, dressing with swift efficiency. But before they rejoined the others, he caught Elena's hand one more time. "Whatever happens next," he said quietly, "whatever the Alpha decides, know that meeting you changed something in me, something I thought was broken forever." Elena didn't get a chance to respond. Sasha was already pulling them forward, toward a clearing ahead where Elena could see figures gathering. Dozens of them, and in the center, waiting, was someone who radiated power like heat from a fire. Chapter 5. The Alpha's judgment, the clearing was ancient. Elena could feel it in her bones. Massive stones formed a rough circle, worn smooth by centuries of weather and use. Wolves, some in human form, others in their animal state, lined the perimeter, watching her with eyes that glowed in the dappled sunlight. The air was thick with tension, expectation, and something else. Something primal that made every hair on Elena's body stand on end. The Alpha stood at the center of it all. He was older than Elena had expected, maybe in his 50s, with silver threading through his dark hair. But age hadn't diminished him. If anything, it had honed him into something more dangerous. Power rolled off him in waves, and even from across the clearing, Elena felt the weight of his authority pressing down on her lungs. Kieran Blackthorne. The Alpha's voice was deep, resonant, carrying effortlessly across the space. You've brought the human. As you commanded, Alpha Donovan. Kieran's voice had changed. Formal, deferential, but with an undercurrent of steel. His hand remained at the small of Elena's back, a constant reminder that she wasn't alone. Alpha Donovan's eyes, a pale, ice blue that seemed to see everything, fixed on Elena. She felt stripped bare under that gaze. Every secret and fear laid open for examination. Come forward, human. Let me see what's caused such disruption in my territory. Elena's legs didn't want to move, but Kieran's gentle pressure urged her forward. They crossed the clearing together, and Elena was acutely aware of dozens of predators tracking their every step. One wrong move, one sign of threat, and she'd be torn apart before she could scream. They stopped 10 feet from the Alpha. Kieran bowed his head slightly, acknowledgement of rank. But Elena noticed he didn't fully submit. Didn't bare his throat or drop to his knees. There was respect in his posture, but not subjugation. "What is your name?" Donovan asked. "Elena Graves." Her voice was steadier than she'd expected. "I didn't mean to intrude on your territory. I was just trying to get to a cabin rental when the storm... I know why you're here." Donovan circled them slowly, and Elena fought the urge to turn and track his movement. Predators liked it when prey ran or showed fear. "You're running from a broken engagement, from betrayal, from a life that disappointed you." He paused in front of her again. "The question is, what do you plan to do now?" "I don't understand what you're asking. You've seen what we are. You know our secret. That makes you either an asset or a liability." His expression was unreadable. "I need to determine which." "She's not a threat." Kieran stepped slightly forward, protective. "She's injured, alone, and she has nowhere else to go. She won't expose us." "You sound very certain of that, given you've known her less than a day." Donovan's gaze shifted to Kieran, and something passed between them. A conversation without words. "Tell me, Kieran, why did you bring her to your home? Why not leave her at the crash site for human authorities to find?" Elena felt Kieran tense beside her. The question was a trap, she realized. "A test. Because she was hurt," Kieran said carefully. "Because the roads were flooded. Because she smelled like fate." The words came from a woman emerging from the crowd. Elderly, with white hair and eyes that held ancient wisdom. She moved with a walking stick, but there was nothing frail about her presence. If anything, the other wolves seemed to defer to her even more than to the Alpha, Elder Mara. Donovan's tone held respect. "You've sensed something?" "I've sensed what everyone with a nose has sensed, Donovan. You're just too stubborn to admit it." Mara approached Elena, studying her with unnerving intensity. "This human carries a scent that calls to one of our own. Old magic, destiny." She turned to Kieran. "You felt it the moment you found her, didn't you? The pull. The recognition." Kieran's jaw clenched, but he didn't deny it. "What are you talking about?" Elena asked, looking between them. "What pull? What destiny?" Mara smiled, but it wasn't entirely kind. "Child, do you believe in fate? In souls that are meant to find each other across time and circumstance?" I don't know. I never really thought about it." "Well, fate believes in you." Mara tapped her walking stick against the ground.
You're Kieran's mate.
His true mate. The one the moon herself has chosen for him. The clearing erupted in murmurs. Some shocked, some disbelieving, others angry. Elena felt the world tilt sideways. That's impossible, Sasha said, pushing forward. She's human. We don't mate with humans. We can't. The bloodline would be. The moon doesn't care about our politics, Sasha. Mara's voice cut through the noise like a blade. She chooses who she chooses. And she's chosen this one for our lost prince. Lost prince? Elena's head was spinning. What does that mean? Kieran, what is she talking about? But Kieran wouldn't meet her eyes. His expression was anguished, conflicted, as if he'd been found guilty of a crime he didn't know how to defend against. Alpha Donovan held up a hand, and silence fell immediately. Elder Mara, are you certain? As certain as I've ever been. Look at him, Donovan. Look at how he stands with her, how he's positioned himself between her and every possible threat. His wolf recognized her before his human mind did. That's why he couldn't leave her. Why he brought her to his den. Why he's willing to challenge the entire pack to keep her safe. Mara turned to Elena. And you, child. Tell me true. When you look at him, what do you feel? Elena's mouth was dry. I don't know. It's too fast. I just met him. That's not what I asked. Elena looked at Kieran, really looked at him. At the fear in his eyes, the hope, the desperate need warring with resignation. And she felt it, that pull Mara had mentioned. That sense of rightness that defied logic, like finding something precious she hadn't known she'd lost. Safe, Elena whispered. I feel safe and seen, and like maybe... She swallowed hard. Like maybe running away led me exactly where I was supposed to be. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Garrett laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. This is insane. We're going to let a human into the pack? Into our territory? Give her access to our secrets, our weaknesses? She'll betray us the first chance she gets. She won't. Kieran's voice was fierce. I'd stake my life on it. You're staking all our lives on it, Sasha said, but her tone was less hostile now. More resigned. If the elder says it's true, if she's really your mate, we can't fight the moon's will. But Kieran, you have to understand what you're asking. For the pack to accept a human, I'm asking you to trust me, Kieran said. The way I've trusted all of you. The way I fought beside you. Bled with you. For 15 years I've been loyal to this pack. I've never asked for anything. I'm asking now. Donovan studied them both for a long moment. Then he sighed, looking suddenly tired. 15 years ago you came to us broken and half-wild, Kieran Blackthorne. We took you in, made you pack, helped you become whole again. He paused. I suppose it's only fair we help you again now, when the moon has finally given you what you've needed all along. Alpha. Garrett started to protest. Enough. Donovan's command silenced him. The elder has spoken. The moon has chosen. But... He turned to Elena, and his expression became stern. There are conditions, human. If you wish to stay in Blackpine Territory, if you wish to remain with Kieran, you must prove yourself. Prove you can be trusted. Prove you won't run screaming to the human world with our secrets. How do I prove that? Elena asked. You live among us. Learn our ways. Show us that you can respect what we are without fear or judgment. He stepped closer, and Elena had to force herself not to retreat. And if at any point you prove to be a danger to my pack, human or not, mate or not, I will end you myself. Do you understand? Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. I understand. Do you accept these terms? She looked at Kieran, saw the naked hope in his eyes, saw the man, the wolf, who had saved her, protected her, trusted her with his deepest secret. Yes, Elena said. I accept. Donovan nodded slowly. Then welcome to Blackpine Territory, Elena Graves. May the moon guide you both. He turned to address the gathered pack. Kieran Blackthorne's mate is under pack protection. Anyone who harms her answers to me. Spread the word. As the crowd began to disperse, murmuring among themselves, Kieran finally pulled Elena close, his arms wrapping around her in a fierce embrace. Thank you, he breathed against her hair. Thank you for not running. Elena held him tight, feeling the rapid beat of his heart against her chest. I told you, I'm done running from the truth. But even as she said it, She couldn't shake the feeling that the truth was far more complicated than she'd imagined, and that whatever had just begun between them was going to test every ounce of courage she possessed. Chapter 6: Secrets and Shadows. The walk back to Kieran's cabin was silent, charged with unspoken questions. Elena's mind reeled with everything that had happened. The transformation, the Alpha's judgment, the impossible word that kept echoing in her head. Mate Sasha and the others had peeled off at some point, leaving Elena and Kieran alone on the forest path. The afternoon sun filtered through the canopy above, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt surreal, like walking through someone else's dream. "You're being very quiet," Kieran said finally, his voice careful. "I'm trying to process the fact that I apparently have a supernatural soulmate I met 12 hours ago," Elena replied. "How long does that usually take?" Despite everything, Kieran's lips twitched. "There's no usual timeline for this. True mates are rare, even among our kind. Most wolves never find theirs. But you found yours. Me." Elena stopped walking, forcing him to turn and face her. "Kieran, I need you to explain what that means. What everyone back there was talking about. This can't just be something that happens because magic says so." "It's not magic." "Not exactly." Kieran ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Elena was beginning to recognize as his tell for discomfort. "It's more like recognition. When a wolf finds their true mate, it's not a choice or a spell. It's a knowing, deep in our bones, like finding the missing piece of yourself you didn't know was gone." "That's convenient," Elena said, and heard the bitterness in her own voice. "Just a few days ago I thought I knew who my missing piece was." "I was wrong about that too." Kieran flinched. "This isn't like that. Your fiancé? He chose to betray you. He made a decision. This is different, is it? Or is it just another way for someone else to decide what I should feel? What I should want?" Elena wrapped her arms around herself. "I came here to escape being told what my life should look like. And now I'm supposed to just accept that the moon or fate or whatever decided for me?" "No." Kieran's voice was fierce. "Elena, no. The mate bond doesn't force feelings. It doesn't override free will. It just opens a door. You still get to choose whether to walk through it." "Then what happens if I choose not to?" The pain that flashed across Kieran's face made Elena's chest ache. "Then I'll respect that choice. You'll be free to leave when the road's clear. Free to build whatever life you want, wherever you want." He looked away. "It would hurt. The bond, once recognized, doesn't just disappear, but your choice is your own. Always." Elena studied him. This man who was so much more than a man. Who had saved her, protected her, offered her truth when she'd been drowning in lies. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "That's not fair. Life isn't fair." "Answer the question." Kieran's amber eyes found hers, burning with intensity. "I want you to stay. I want time to show you that what we could have together is real. Not because fate demands it, but because you and I, we fit. I felt it the moment I found you in that wreckage. And it terrified me. Why? Because I thought I was done with hope." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I thought I'd accepted that some things were just too broken to fix." "What things?" Elena stepped closer. "Elder Mara called you a lost prince." "What did she mean?" Kieran turned away, his shoulders rigid. "That's a story for another time." "No." Elena caught his arm, feeling the muscle tense under her touch. "You said you'd give me truth, all of it. I can't make any kind of choice about this bond thing if you're keeping secrets from me." For a long moment she thought he'd refuse. Then he gestured toward a fallen log beside the path. "Sit, please. This is going to take a while." They sat side by side, not touching, but close enough that Elena could feel the heat radiating from his body. Kieran stared into the forest, gathering his thoughts, and when he finally spoke, his voice was hollow with old pain. "I wasn't born into Blackpine Pack," he began. "I came from the Silvercrest Pack, 3 territories north of here. My father was Alpha. I was his heir, the Prince Mara mentioned. Being an Alpha's son meant responsibility, duty, tradition. It meant I had no room for weakness or doubt." "That sounds lonely," Elena said softly. "It was. But I had someone who made it bearable. Her name was Lydia." Kieran's hands clenched into fists. "We grew up together, trained together. Everyone assumed we'd be mates, that I'd take her as my Luna when I became Alpha, and I wanted to believe it too. I cared for her, trusted her. Elena's stomach dropped. She knew where this was going, knew the shape of betrayal intimately. There was a challenge to my father's authority, Kieran continued. A coalition of wolves who thought he was too traditional, too rigid. They wanted to modernize, to integrate more with the human world. The conflict turned violent, and on the night of the final confrontation, when everything came to a head, he paused, swallowing hard. Lydia chose them. She'd been working with the coalition the entire time, feeding them information, undermining my father's authority, using everything I'd told her in confidence against us. Kieran, my father died that night. So did my younger brother. The coalition won, and I was exiled, cast out for being the old Alpha's son, for representing everything they wanted to destroy. His voice was devoid of emotion now, reciting facts like a history lesson. I wandered for months, half wild, barely holding on to my human side, until I stumbled into Blackpine Territory, and Alpha Donovan took me in. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. I'm so sorry, don't be. It was 15 years ago. I've built a life here, found peace of a sort. He finally looked at her, but I swore I'd never trust anyone with my heart again. Never let anyone close enough to destroy me like that. And then you crashed into my territory, bleeding and brave and looking at me like I was worth saving. You are worth saving, Elena said fiercely. Am I? Kieran's smile was bitter. Or am I just a broken wolf trying to find meaning in a bond neither of us asked for? Stop that! Elena grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. You want to know why I didn't run when you showed me what you are? Why I didn't scream or faint or lose my mind? Why? Because when I looked at you, wolf or man, I saw someone who understood. Someone who knows what it's like to have the person you trusted most stab you in the back, to question everything you thought you knew about yourself. Her voice cracked. I see you, Kieran, and you see me. That's not nothing. That's not just magic or fate or whatever. That's real. Kieran's eyes searched hers, desperate and vulnerable. Elena, a branch snapped somewhere in the forest. Both of them tensed, Kieran's body shifting instantly into predator mode. He stood slowly, positioning himself between Elena and the sound, one hand extended behind him to keep her back. Show yourself, he called, his voice carrying authority. I can smell you. For a moment, nothing. Then a figure emerged from the shadows. A young man, maybe 20, with shaggy dark hair and eyes that glowed yellow-green in the dimming light. He was lean and wiry, moving with the nervous energy of someone not quite in control. Kieran, the young man said, his voice rough. Alpha Donovan sent me. There's been an incident in town. Human tourists asking questions about the wolf sightings, getting too close to Pack territory. His eyes flickered to Elena, curious and wary. He wants you to handle it. Your experience with humans makes you the best choice, now? Kieran's frustration was evident, he said immediately, before they call in wildlife authorities or hunters. The young man shifted his weight. I can stay with the human. Keep her safe until you return. Absolutely not. Kieran's response was instant and sharp. She comes with me, or we both stay. Kieran, you can't bring her into town. She's barely recovered from the crash, and if the tourists see her with you, it'll raise questions about... I said no, Marcus. Kieran's eyes flashed gold. Find someone else to babysit, or tell the Alpha I'm not leaving her. Marcus held up his hands in surrender. All right. I'll tell him. But he's not going to be happy about this. The pack comes first, Kieran. Even before... He trailed off, glancing at Elena. Even before mates. After Marcus melted back into the forest, Elena touched Kieran's arm. You should go. If there's a threat to your pack, you're my pack too now, Kieran said firmly. That's what accepting you as my mate means. You're not less important than any of them. You're more important. The words wrapped around Elena's heart like a promise, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Then we'll figure it out together, she said. Whatever comes next. But Kieran, no more secrets. If we're doing this, if I'm staying and learning and trying, I need complete honesty. About everything. Kieran pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. Everything, he agreed. I promise. But as they stood there in the growing darkness, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that some secrets were buried too deep to ever fully unearth, and that whatever was brewing in Blackpine Territory was about to test their fragile new bond in ways neither of them were prepared for. Chapter 7. Into the wolf's den night had fallen by the time they reached Kieran's cabin, and with it came a cold that cut through even his heavy jacket. Elena's concussion was making itself known again. Her head throbbed with each step, and the world had taken on a dreamlike quality that made it hard to distinguish between exhaustion and shock. "Easy," Kieran murmured, catching her when she stumbled on the porch steps. Without hesitation, he swept her into his arms, carrying her inside with the same effortless strength he'd shown the night before. "You've pushed yourself too hard today. I watched you turn into a wolf, met your alpha, and found out I'm supposedly your destined soulmate," Elena said, her words slightly slurred. "I think I'm entitled to be a little wobbly." Kieran's laugh was soft as he carried her upstairs to the bedroom. "Fair point." He set her gently on the bed, then knelt to remove her boots. His boots, really. Several sizes too large and caked with forest mud. The gesture was intimate, domestic, and it made Elena's chest tighten with unexpected emotion. "I can do that myself," she protested weakly. "I know you can." Kieran looked up at her, his amber eyes warm in the lamplight. "Let me take care of you anyway." Something about the way he said it, not possessive or patronizing, but simply offering, made Elena's defenses crumble a little more. She'd spent so long being strong, being independent, proving she didn't need anyone, but maybe needing someone wasn't the same as being weak. "Okay," she whispered. Kieran finished with her boots, then disappeared into the bathroom. Elena heard water running, and a moment later he returned with a damp cloth and a first aid kit. "Let me check your bandage," he said, sitting beside her on the bed. As his fingers worked carefully at the gauze on her temple, Elena studied his face. In the soft light, the harsh lines of stress had eased slightly, revealing something gentler underneath. There were faint scars along his jawline that she hadn't noticed before. Thin, silvery lines that might have been from claws. "Does it hurt?" she asked quietly. "The transformation?" Kieran's hands paused. "Yes, every time. It's like being torn apart and rebuilt all at once, but you get used to it. I don't know if I could get used to that. You'd be surprised what you can adapt to when you have no choice." He finished cleaning the wound, applying a fresh bandage with practiced ease. "The physical pain is nothing compared to the first time you shift and realize you're not fully human anymore. That you never will be again. Were you born like this? Yes, all purebloods are. We have our first shift during puberty, usually around 13 or 14. It's terrifying and exhilarating, and it changes everything." His eyes grew distant. "My father helped me through mine, taught me to control it, to embrace both sides of what I am." Elena heard the grief beneath his words. "You miss him. Every day." Kieran set aside the first aid kit, but he didn't move away. He wasn't perfect. He was stubborn, traditional, sometimes too rigid, but he loved his pack, loved his family. He didn't deserve to die the way he did. "And Lydia?" Elena asked carefully. "What happened to her after everything?" Kieran's expression hardened. "She became the new Alpha's mate. Got everything she wanted. Power, status, control. Last I heard, Silvercrest Pack has become exactly what she and the Coalition envisioned. Modern. Integrated. Weak. You think integration with humans makes them weak? I think forgetting what we are, trying to pretend we're just humans who can shift, that's weak. We're predators, Elena. We have instincts, hierarchies, laws that humans don't understand. Trying to live by their rules means denying our nature." He paused. "But I also think my father took it too far in the other direction. He isolated us, made us fear the human world instead of learning to coexist with it." "So you're caught between two extremes," Elena said. "Not traditional enough for your father's world. Not modern enough for Lydia's." Kieran's smile was rueful. "Story of my life." "Maybe you don't have to be either." Elena reached out, her fingers brushing his hand. "Maybe you get to choose something different. A third path. Is that what you are?" Kieran turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. "My third path? I don't know what I am yet. Elena admitted. Everything's happening so fast. Yesterday I was just a broken woman running away from her life. Now I'm sitting here holding hands with a werewolf, talking about pack politics and destiny like it's normal. Nothing about this is normal, Kieran agreed. But Elena, what you said earlier about seeing me, about understanding, I need you to know that goes both ways. When I found you in that car, bleeding and terrified, I didn't just sense a mate bond. I saw someone who'd been betrayed, someone who'd lost everything but kept fighting anyway, someone brave enough to trust again despite every reason not to. I'm not that brave, Elena whispered. I'm scared, Kieran. Of this, of you, of what it means if I stay. Good. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. Fear means you're taking it seriously, that you understand the stakes. If you weren't afraid, I'd be worried about your judgment. Elena laughed despite herself. So what happens now? Is there some kind of mate ritual? A ceremony? Please tell me there's not a ceremony. No ceremony. Not unless you want one. Kieran's expression turned serious. The mate bond isn't something that has to be formalized or completed right away. It's a connection, a foundation. But what we build on that foundation, that's up to us. We can take it as slow as you need. How slow is slow in werewolf terms? However slow you want. Days, weeks, months. He squeezed her hand gently. I've waited 15 years to feel anything close to hope again. I can wait as long as it takes for you to be sure. The patience in his voice, the absolute certainty that she was worth waiting for. It undid something in Elena, made tears well up that she'd been holding back since the clearing. I don't know how to do this, she admitted, her voice breaking. I don't know how to trust my instincts anymore. Marcus, he made me feel crazy for months. Made me doubt every feeling, every suspicion. And now I'm supposed to trust that what I feel for you is real. That it's not just trauma or destiny or... Hey. Kieran cupped her face, his touch infinitely gentle. Look at me. What you feel doesn't have to make sense yet. It doesn't have to be defined or explained. You just have to be honest about it. With yourself and with me, I feel... Elena took a shaky breath. Safe, seen. Like maybe I'm not as broken as I thought. And that terrifies me. Because the last time I felt safe with someone, it destroyed me. I'm not him, Kieran said fiercely. I will never be him. But I understand why you need to protect yourself. Why you need time to learn to trust again. He pressed his forehead to hers. So we'll take it slow. We'll be honest. And if at any point you need space or want to leave, I'll help you go, even if it kills me. Elena closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of him, the solid reality of his presence. I don't want to leave, she whispered. Not yet, maybe not ever. Is that crazy? If it is, then we're both crazy. They stayed like that for a long moment, breathing together, neither quite ready to let go. Then Kieran pulled back slightly, his expression turning reluctant. You need rest, he said. Real rest. Your body is still healing. Where will you sleep? Couch downstairs. I'll be close if you need anything. Elena caught his hand before he could stand. Stay, please, just in the chair. Like last night. I don't want to be alone. Something soft and vulnerable crossed Kieran's face. Are you sure? I'm not sure about anything. But I know I sleep better when you're near. That has to mean something. Kieran settled into the chair by the window, and Elena burrowed under the quilts, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion. As her eyes grew heavy, she heard him speak softly. Elena? Thank you. For giving this. For giving us. A chance. Elena wanted to respond, to say something meaningful, but sleep was already pulling her under. Her last conscious thought was simple and true. I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Outside, the moon rose full and bright over Blackpine Territory. And in the forest, wolves began to howl, a sound that was equal parts warning and welcome. The pack was watching, waiting, to see if their lost prince had finally found his salvation, or his downfall. Chapter 8. Truths Beneath the Surface. Elena woke to the smell of coffee and something baking, cinnamon maybe and vanilla. Morning light streamed through the windows, painting everything in shades of honey and gold. For the first few drowsy seconds she forgot where she was, forgot everything that had happened. Then memory crashed back like a wave. Werewolves, mates, Kieran. She sat up slowly, relieved when her head didn't immediately punish her with stabbing pain. The concussion was improving. The chair by the window was empty, the quilt folded neatly over its arm. Evidence that Kieran had stayed through the night as promised. Voices drifted up from downstairs. Kieran's deep rumble and a woman's lighter tone, though not Sasha's sharp bite. This voice was warmer, tinged with laughter. Elena pulled on one of Kieran's flannel shirts over her tank top and made her way downstairs, moving carefully. The cabin looked different in daylight, more rustic than she'd realized, with exposed beams and a massive stone fireplace. Everything was neat but worn, lived in. A home, not just a house. In the kitchen, Kieran stood at the stove while a woman in her 40s perched on a bar stool, gesturing animatedly as she spoke. She had kind eyes and laugh lines, her dark hair streaked with gray. When she saw Elena, her face lit up with genuine warmth. "You must be Elena. I'm Dr. Sarah Morrison. But please, call me Sarah. Everyone does." She hopped off the stool and approached with an easy confidence. "I came to check on that head of yours. Kieran's been worried sick." "I have not," Kieran protested, but the tips of his ears were red. "He's checked on you 17 times since sunrise," Sarah confided in a stage whisper. I counted. Elena felt a smile tug at her lips despite herself. 17 seems excessive. That's what I said. Sarah pulled out a penlight. "Now let me take a look at you. Track my finger, please." As Sarah conducted her examination, checking Elena's pupils, asking about symptoms, testing her reflexes, Elena caught Kieran watching from the kitchen. His expression was unguarded in a way she hadn't seen before, open and almost boyish with relief when Sarah pronounced the concussion improving. "You're healing well," Sarah said, packing away her medical kit. "Better than expected, actually. Keep resting, stay hydrated, and no strenuous activity for at least another week. And that means no running through forests in storms," she added pointedly. "I'll try to avoid that," Elena said dryly. Sarah squeezed her hand. "You know, the whole territory is buzzing about you. First human to be accepted as a mate in Blackpine in over 50 years. That's significant. I'm still trying to wrap my head around what that even means. It means you're one of us now, under pack protection. And if anyone gives you trouble, which they might, humans aren't always welcomed with open arms, you come find me. I've been patch physician for this pack for 20 years. They listen to me," Sarah winked. "Well, most of them do." After Sarah left with promises to check in again in a few days, Elena found herself alone with Kieran in the warm kitchen. He slid a plate toward her, cinnamon rolls, homemade by the look of them, still steaming. "You bake?" Elena asked, surprised. "My mother taught me. She said an alpha should know how to nurture as well as protect." Kieran poured coffee into 2 mugs. Old-fashioned, I know. But some traditions are worth keeping. Elena took a bite and nearly moaned. The roll was perfect. Soft, sweet, with just the right amount of spice. "This is incredible." Don't sound so shocked. But Kieran looked pleased. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Elena noticed small details she'd missed before. The way Kieran's hair curled slightly when it dried. The old scar on his left wrist. The careful way he moved around the kitchen like he was trying not to take up too much space. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said finally. "Anything. Yesterday, Elder Mara said true mates were rare." "How rare?" Kieran set down his coffee. "In a pack of 50 wolves, maybe 1 or 2 will find their true mate in their lifetime. Most wolves choose compatible partners, wolves they care for, who fit their life and goals. Those bonds can be strong and lasting. But true mates..." He paused, searching for words. "It's different, deeper. Like your souls recognize each other on a level that transcends logic or choice." That sounds intense. It is. It can be overwhelming. The bond amplifies everything. Emotions, physical sensations, even thoughts sometimes if it's strong enough. Kieran's eyes met hers. But it also means you're never truly alone. That someone out there understands you completely, even the parts you don't understand yourself. Elena's chest tightened. What if I'm not ready for that? For someone to see all of me? Then we take it slow. The bond doesn't force intimacy, Elena. It invites it. But you control the pace. You decide how much to share, how fast to open up. He reached across the table, palm up, offering, "I meant what I said. However long you need." Elena placed her hand in his, feeling the calluses, the warmth, the subtle tremor that said he wasn't as calm as he appeared. "I want to try," she said softly. "I want to get to know you. The real you. Not just the wolf, or the mate, or the lost prince. Just Kieran." Something blazed in his eyes, hope and fear and desperate longing all at once. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. But let's start simple." Elena smiled. "What's your favorite color?" Kieran blinked, clearly not expecting that question. Then he laughed, the sound rich and surprised. "Green, forest green specifically, the color of the woods right after rain, when everything feels alive and new. You? Blue, deep ocean blue, the kind that makes you wonder what's beneath the surface." "Fitting," Kieran murmured. "What else?" They talked for hours. Small things at first. Favorite books, worst fears, childhood memories. Elena learned that Kieran loved thunderstorms, hated coffee but drank it anyway, and had a weakness for terrible action movies. That he'd taught himself guitar during his wandering years. That he volunteered with the local wildlife rehab. That he'd once spent 3 months living as a wolf because his human side hurt too much to bear. In turn, she told him about her mother's death when she was 12, how she'd raised herself while her father drowned in work and her sister in rebellion, about her love of photography, her dream of traveling the world, the way Marcus had slowly convinced her those dreams were impractical, childish, proof she wasn't ready for real adult life. "He made me small," Elena said, surprised by the anger in her voice. "Every day a little smaller, until I barely recognized myself." "You're not small," Kieran said fiercely. "You survived betrayal, picked up and left everything behind, and faced down a pack of werewolves without breaking. That's not small, Elena. That's extraordinary." Tears pricked her eyes. "I don't feel extraordinary. I feel broken. Broken things can heal stronger than they were before." The cracks let the light in. Kieran stood, coming around the table to kneel beside her chair. "You're healing. I can see it. And if you'll let me, I'd like to help." Elena touched his face, tracing the sharp line of his jaw. "Why?" she whispered. "Why me? You could have any wolf in the pack. Someone who understands this world, who wouldn't be a liability, because you're you." Kieran turned his head, pressing a kiss to her palm that sent electricity racing up her arm. "Because when I look at you, I see home. Because you make me want to be better than I am. Because the wolf in me recognized you before my human brain caught up, and everything in me says you're worth fighting for. Even though I'm human? Even though it complicates everything? Especially because of that." His eyes held hers. "You're teaching me that maybe the answer isn't choosing between my father's way and Lydia's way. Maybe it's finding something new, something that honors what we are while embracing what we could become." Before Elena could respond, a sharp knock at the door shattered the moment. Kieran's entire body went tense, and when he stood, his movements were predatory, protective. "Stay here," he murmured. But Elena followed him anyway, staying back but close enough to see. Through the window she recognized Isaiah, the quiet wolf from yesterday, looking troubled. Kieran opened the door. "What's wrong?" "The tourist from yesterday," Isaiah said grimly. "They didn't leave town like we hoped. They're still asking questions, showing pictures of wolf tracks to anyone who'll listen. And Kieran," he hesitated, "one of them is a wildlife biologist. She's talking about setting up cameras, doing a proper study of the local wolf population." Kieran swore softly. "That's the last thing we need. It gets worse. Garrett and some of the younger wolves want to handle it their way, scare them off. Alpha Donovan is trying to keep things calm, but you know how Garrett gets when he feels threatened." Isaiah's eyes flickered to Elena. "He's using your mate as an example of why humans can't be trusted, saying if we let one in, more will follow, that we're inviting exposure." Elena felt cold dread settle in her stomach. "This is my fault!" "No," Kieran's voice was steel. "This is not your fault. Those tourists would be here whether you crashed in our territory or not." He turned to Isaiah. "Tell Alpha Donovan I'm coming. I'll handle the tourists. And her? Isaiah asked carefully. Kieran looked at Elena and she saw the conflict in his eyes. Keep her safe by leaving her here, or bring her along and prove she was part of the pack, not a liability? I'm coming with you, Elena said before he could decide. If this is about me, about humans being a threat, then hiding won't help. Let me prove I can be trusted. Let me help, Elena. You said I'm part of this now, part of the pack. Then let me act like it. Kieran studied her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. All right, he said. But you stay close to me. And if things get dangerous, you run. Promise me. Elena took his hand, squeezing tight. I promise. But as they headed out into the morning, she couldn't shake the feeling that running might not be an option. Chapter 9. The Human Threat. The town of Blackpine was smaller than Elena had expected. Barely more than a main street lined with weathered storefronts. A diner, a general store, and a gas station that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. But what struck her most was the atmosphere. Every person they passed watched them with knowing eyes. Some nodded respectfully to Kieran. Others stared at Elena with curiosity or barely concealed hostility. They knew. All of them. This wasn't just a town near wolf territory. It was wolf territory, disguised as human civilization. How many? Elena asked quietly as they walked. How many what? How many humans actually live here? Real humans, I mean. Kieran's hand tightened around hers. Maybe 10%. The rest are pack or family of pack. Blackpine has always been ours. We built it, maintain it, use it as a buffer between our territory and the outside world. So I'm walking through a town full of werewolves. You're walking through a town full of people who will protect you. Because you're mine, Kieran corrected. But yes, stay close. They found the tourists outside the diner, 3 of them, clustered around a laptop at an outdoor table despite the cold. 2 men and a woman, all in their 30s, wearing expensive hiking gear that screamed city money trying to look outdoorsy. The woman was the biologist, Elena guessed. She had that intense, focused energy of someone on a mission, gesturing animatedly at the screen while the men leaned in. Fascinated. That's them, Isaiah murmured. He'd been trailing them silently, along with Sasha, who looked like she wanted to solve the problem with her teeth. Let me handle this, Kieran said. Then, to Elena. Just follow my lead. He approached the table with an easy, non-threatening stride, his whole demeanor shifting into something charming and approachable. Elena watched, fascinated as he transformed before her eyes, from predator to friendly local. Afternoon, folks, Kieran said with a smile. Heard you've been asking about our wolves. I'm Kieran Blackthorne. I run wildlife management for the area. Maybe I can help answer some questions. The biologist looked up, her eyes sharp and assessing. Dr. Jennifer Walsh. We've been documenting some unusual wolf activity in this region. Tracks that suggest individuals far larger than typical North American gray wolves. She pulled out a folder of photographs. Have you seen anything like this? Elena's breath caught. The prints in the photos were massive, easily twice the size of normal wolf tracks, and recent, judging by their clarity. Bears, Kieran said without missing a beat. We get a lot of grizzly activity this time of year. Their prints can look wolfish to the untrained eye, especially in mud or snow that distorts the shape. I'm not untrained, Dr. Walsh said coolly. I've been studying wolf populations for 15 years. These are canine tracks. 5 toes, specific pad patterns, gait measurements that indicate a 4-legged predator, not a bear's plantigrade stance. Could be a hybrid, one of the men offered. Wolf-dog crosses can get pretty big. Too big, Dr. Walsh countered. And the behavioral patterns are wrong. These wolves are organized, territorial, and far more intelligent than normal pack behavior would suggest. Last night we had 3 separate individuals circle our campsite in what appeared to be coordinated surveillance. She looked directly at Kieran, almost like they were assessing a threat. The air suddenly felt too thin. Elena saw Kieran's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly, the only sign of his tension. Wolves are intelligent animals, he said carefully. Curious too. They probably smelled your food stores and were checking for easy meals. That's what I thought at first. Dr. Walsh pulled up something on her laptop, until we reviewed our trail cam footage from last night. Take a look at this. She turned the screen toward them, and Elena's heart stopped. The footage was grainy, night vision green, but unmistakable. A wolf, massive in midnight black, stood on its hind legs against a tree, its front paws almost human-like as it examined the camera. It looked directly into the lens with glowing amber eyes, then deliberately turned and walked away with an intelligence that was impossible to miss. Kieran's wolf. She'd know those eyes anywhere. That's not normal wolf behavior, Dr. Walsh said. That's problem-solving, tool awareness. That animal understood what the camera was and made a conscious decision about it. It was probably just scratching itself on the tree, Kieran said, but his voice had lost some of its casual confidence. For 43 seconds, while staring directly at the camera, Dr. Walsh leaned forward. Mr. Blackthorne, I'm not here to cause trouble, but something unusual is happening in these mountains, whether it's an undocumented subspecies, some kind of hybrid population, or... She paused. Well, I need to understand what I'm looking at, and I'm going to keep investigating until I do. You should leave. The words came from Sasha, who had materialized beside their table like a shadow. Her smile was all teeth. These mountains are dangerous. People get lost, injured. Sometimes they don't come back. Is that a threat? Dr. Walsh stood, her chin jutting out defiantly. It's a fact. Sasha's eyes flashed yellow for just a second, too fast for the tourists to catch, but Elena saw it. We take no responsibility for what happens to people who ignore posted warnings and wander into restricted areas. Sasha, that's enough. Kieran's voice cracked with authority. He turned back to Dr. Walsh, and Elena could see him calculating, strategizing. Look, Dr. Walsh, I understand scientific curiosity. I respect it. But this isn't some nature preserve where you can just set up shop and do whatever research you want. This is private land, protected habitat. And yes, we do have an unusual wolf population. They're part of a conservation effort that's been ongoing for decades. What kind of conservation effort? The classified kind. Government-funded, strict protocols, non-disclosure agreements. Kieran met her eyes steadily. I can get you the contact information for the project director if you'd like. But they won't tell you anything I haven't already said, and they definitely won't grant you access. It was a brilliant lie, plausible enough to give Dr. Walsh pause, vague enough to discourage further inquiry. Elena watched the biologist process this information, saw doubt creep into her expression. I'd like that contact information, Dr. Walsh said finally. Of course, I'll have it sent to the diner by this evening. Kieran offered his hand. In the meantime, I'd really recommend you folks head back to the main highway. There's a storm system moving in tomorrow, going to be nasty. You don't want to be camping in the backcountry when it hits. Dr. Walsh shook his hand reluctantly. Fine, but I'm not giving up on this story. Mr. Blackthorne, if there's something significant happening with the wolf population here, the scientific community has a right to know. Of course, Kieran said smoothly. Science should always pursue truth, but safely and legally. As they walked away, Elena felt the tension radiating off Kieran like heat. They'd barely made it around the corner when he stopped, pressing his palms against the brick wall of a building, breathing hard. That was too close, Isaiah muttered. Kieran, that footage, I know. Kieran's voice was strained. I knew there was a camera. I thought I'd disabled it. You posed for it, Sasha snapped. What were you thinking? I was thinking I wanted them to know they were being watched, to feel uncomfortable enough to leave. Kieran straightened, running a hand through his hair. I didn't expect them to actually review the footage with that level of analysis. We need to destroy it, Sasha said. Break into their camp, wipe their drives, scatter their equipment. No. Alpha Donovan's voice cut through the argument. He emerged from the shadows of an alley, and Elena realized he'd been there the whole time, listening. Violence draws more attention than it prevents. Kieran's approach was correct. We give them bureaucratic runaround, make the research seem boring and inaccessible, and wait for them to lose interest. And if they don't lose interest? Sasha challenged. Donovan's eyes were cold. Then we take more permanent measures. But we tried diplomacy first. He looked at Elena, really looked at her, and she felt the weight of his assessment. What do you think, human? You understand their world better than we do. Will the scientist let this go? All eyes turned to Elena. She swallowed hard, thinking of Dr. Walsh's intensity, her determination. No, Elena said honestly. She won't. People like that. When they find something that doesn't fit their understanding of the world, they can't let it go. It becomes an obsession. She'll keep digging, keep looking until she finds proof. Then we're in danger of exposure, Garrett said, appearing behind Alpha Donovan. Because of her. He pointed at Elena. Because Kieran was too busy protecting his human pet to properly handle the situation. Kieran moved so fast Elena barely saw it. He had Garrett by the throat, slammed against the wall, growling low and dangerous. Say that again, Kieran snarled. Call her that one more time and see what happens. Enough. Donovan's command was absolute. Kieran, release him. Garrett, shut your mouth before I do it for you. Kieran stepped back, but his eyes were still flashing gold. Elena touched his arm, feeling the muscles coiled tight as springs beneath her fingers. There has to be another way, she said softly. Something that doesn't involve violence or exposure. Maybe I could help. How? Donovan asked, his tone skeptical but not dismissive. Elena's mind raced. Dr. Walsh is a scientist. She wants data, proof, understanding. What if we gave her a story she could believe? Something mundane enough to lose its appeal but satisfying enough to answer her questions. Keep talking, Donovan said. The hybrid theory, Elena continued, gaining confidence. What if we staged evidence of a breeding program gone wrong? Wolf-dog hybrids that escaped, established a population, developed unusual behaviors because of their mixed genetics. It's plausible. Not interesting enough for major scientific journals, but enough to satisfy her curiosity. Kieran was staring at her like she'd just performed magic. That could work. It's risky, Sasha said. If she investigates deeper, she won't, Elena interrupted. Not if we make it messy and disappointing enough. Failed breeding programs happen all the time. They're sad but not groundbreaking. Give her a story about negligent owners, escaped animals, and a local government that's embarrassed about the whole thing. She'll write a blog post and move on. Silence fell as the wolves considered this. Finally, Alpha Donovan nodded slowly. We'll try it your way, human, he said. But if it fails, if she continues to be a threat, we handle it my way. Understood, Elena said, though she didn't want to know what my way meant. As the group dispersed, Kieran pulled Elena aside, his expression a mixture of pride and concern. That was brilliant, he said, but also terrifying. You just involved yourself in pack business, made yourself valuable. There's no going back from this, Elena. You're not an observer anymore. You're one of us. Elena looked up at him, seeing the fear and hope warring in his eyes. Good, she said, because I think I'm finally ready to stop running. From my past, from myself, from this. Kieran's hand cupped her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with heartbreaking tenderness. I'm going to fall in love with you, he whispered. If I haven't already, Elena's breath caught. Kieran, I know it's too soon. I know you're not ready, but I needed you to know. He pressed his forehead to hers. You're extraordinary, Elena Graves, and I'm the luckiest wolf alive that fate brought you to me. Before Elena could respond, a howl split the air, urgent, warning. Something was wrong, and their fragile peace was about to shatter. Chapter 10. Blood and bonds, the howl came from the east, high-pitched, desperate, cut short in a way that made Elena's blood run cold. Around them, every wolf froze, head snapping toward the sound with predatory focus. That's Tyler, Isaiah said, already moving. One of the juveniles. He was supposed to be patrolling the North Ridge. Alone? Kieran's voice was sharp with anger and fear. He volunteered, wanted to prove himself. Alpha Donovan was already striding toward the tree line. Sasha, Isaiah, with me. Garrett, gather the enforcers. Kieran, I'm coming, Kieran said. No room for argument in his tone. Take the human back to your den first. This could be another howl closer now. Different voice. Then the crack of gunfire echoed through the valley. Everything stopped. The sound hung in the air like a curse. Hunters, Sasha breathed, her face pale. Those tourists, they must have gone into the restricted zone despite the warnings. Or they're not tourists at all, Garrett growled. Could be a trap. Could be hunters who know exactly what they're looking for. Alpha Donovan's expression was carved from stone. Everyone moves. Now. Kieran, I don't care about protocol, shift and run. You're fastest. Find Tyler before they do. His eyes cut to Elena. The human stays with Sasha. No. Kieran's response was immediate. She comes with me or I don't go. Kieran, this isn't the time for... I can feel her through the bond. Kieran interrupted, desperation creeping into his voice. If she's in danger, if something happens while I'm gone, it'll break my focus. Compromise the rescue. She's safer with me. It was a lie, or at least an exaggeration, and they both knew it. But Elena saw the calculation in Donovan's eyes, the way he weighed speed against safety. Fine, but she's your responsibility. If she slows you down, if she gets hurt, if she exposes us... I understand, Kieran said. They ran. Elena had never experienced anything like it. Kieran shifted mid-stride, his clothes tearing away as black fur erupted across his body. He dropped to all fours, massive and powerful, then looked back at her with those burning amber eyes. The message was clear. Climb on. You've got to be kidding, Elena gasped, but another gunshot spurred her into action. She grabbed hold of his thick fur, hauling herself onto his back like mounting a horse. The moment she was secure, Kieran bolted. The world became a blur of trees and shadows. Kieran moved with impossible speed, weaving between trunks, leaping over fallen logs, his powerful muscles bunching and releasing beneath her. Elena clung to his neck, her face pressed against his fur, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Other wolves ran alongside them, Sasha and Isaiah in their animal forms, moving like liquid darkness through the forest. Their coordination was perfect, instinctive, a language of movement that needed no words. The scent of blood hit them before they reached the clearing. Kieran skidded to a halt, and Elena slid off his back on shaking legs. Through the trees ahead, she could see movement, hear voices. Male, authoritative, distinctly human, definitely hit it. Blood trail leads this way. Jesus, look at the size of that print. What the hell kind of wolf? Doesn't matter. We get proof, we get paid. Command wants specimens, dead or alive. Elena's blood turned to ice. These weren't random hunters. This was organized. Professional. Kieran shifted back to human form, somehow producing clothes from a pack he'd been carrying. The other wolves melted into the shadows, circling the clearing with deadly silence. Through gestures alone, Donovan, now in human form as well, began coordinating their positions. Tyler's in there, Isaiah whispered, pointing to a dense thicket. I can smell him. He's alive but hurt, and there are 4 humans, all armed. Military-grade weapons. How do you know? Elena asked. The smell. Gun oil, specific type. These aren't civilian hunters. Isaiah's expression was grim. Someone sent them here. Someone who knows what we are. Kieran's hand found Elena's, squeezing once. Reassurance or goodbye, she couldn't tell. Stay here. Don't move, don't make a sound. If things go bad, I'm not leaving you, Elena said fiercely. Elena, I said no. We do this together or not at all. Something blazed in Kieran's eyes. Frustration, admiration, fear. Then he nodded once, sharp and decisive. Stay behind me. Always behind me. They moved as a unit, Kieran, Elena, and the circling wolves. As they approached the clearing, Elena got her first clear look at the hunters. 4 men in tactical gear, high-powered rifles equipped with scopes and suppressors. One was crouched over a trail of blood, following it with professional focus. And there, half hidden in the underbrush, she saw Tyler. He was in human form, a teenager, maybe 17, with sandy hair and a bullet wound in his shoulder. His eyes were wide with pain and terror as he watched the hunters close in. We need a distraction, Donovan murmured. Something to draw them away so we can extract Tyler. I'll do it, Elena said before she could think better of it. Every head snapped toward her. Absolutely not, Kieran growled. It makes sense. I'm human. They won't shoot me on sight. Elena's mind was racing, adrenaline sharpening her thoughts. I can pretend I'm a lost hiker. Draw them back toward the trail while you get Tyler out. Too dangerous, Sasha said. If they're here hunting wolves, they might know about mates. They could use you as leverage. Then we make sure they don't get the chance. Elena looked at Kieran, seeing the war raging behind his eyes. You told me I was part of the pack now. Let me prove it. Let me help save him. If anything happens to you, Kieran's voice broke. It won't, because you'll be right there. Elena touched his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. Trust me. Trust us. For a long moment, Kieran just stared at her. Then he turned to Donovan. She does this. We have wolves on all sides. The second things go wrong, we extract her. No hesitation. Donovan studied Elena with those ice blue eyes. You understand what you're risking? If they figure out you're connected to us, you become a target, permanently. I understand. Elena's voice was steady. But that boy is bleeding and scared, and I won't stand here and do nothing while he suffers. Not when I can help. Something like respect flickered across Donovan's face. Go. But the moment I give the signal, you run. No heroics. Elena nodded and stepped out of the tree line, making her movements deliberately clumsy, loud. She stumbled, gasped, then called out, Hello? Is someone there? Thank God, I've been lost for hours. The hunters spun toward her, weapons raised. Elena raised her hands, making herself look frightened, which wasn't hard, given the circumstances. Don't shoot. Please, I'm just a hiker. I got separated from my group, and I heard gunshots. Ma'am, you need to leave this area immediately. The lead hunter, gray-haired, scarred, authority radiating from him, lowered his rifle slightly. It's not safe. We're tracking a dangerous animal. What kind of animal? Elena moved toward them away from Tyler's hiding spot. I saw something earlier. Huge, like a bear, but different. What did you see exactly? Another hunter stepped closer, his eyes sharp with interest. I'm not sure. It was so fast. But the eyes, they almost glowed. Is that normal? Elena let her voice shake convincingly. Should I be worried? I need to find my group. Behind the hunters, she saw shadows moving. Kieran in wolf form, flanking right. Sasha left, Isaiah circling behind. They were getting into position. Ma'am, I need you to come with us. For your own safety. The lead hunter reached for her arm. Elena stepped back. I can find my own way. I insist. His grip closed around her wrist, tight enough to hurt. And in that moment, his expression changed, sharpened. You smell like wolf, he said softly, dangerously. Like you've been living with them. Rolling in their dens. Terror spiked through Elena's chest. I don't know what you're talking about. Command said there might be a human collaborator. Didn't believe it myself. He yanked her closer, his free hand going to his radio. This is Hunter 1. I've got the insider. Confirm extraction. A massive black shape exploded from the trees. Kieran slammed into the hunter with the force of a freight train, sending him flying. The other hunters opened fire, but the wolves were already on them. Faster than thought, more coordinated than any human team. It was controlled chaos, designed to incapacitate without killing. But one hunter broke free, swinging his rifle toward Elena. Time slowed. She saw his finger tightening on the trigger, saw Kieran too far away to reach her, saw the barrel pointing directly at her chest. Then Sasha hit the hunter from the side, her jaws closing around his wrist with precision. The gun discharged into the air, and Elena dropped to the ground, her ears ringing. When she looked up, it was over. The hunters were disarmed, unconscious, being zip-tied by Isaiah and Garrett. Tyler was being carried out by two younger wolves, his shoulder being bandaged even as they moved. And Kieran was standing over Elena in human form, his chest heaving, his eyes wild with residual fear. Are you hurt? His hands were everywhere, checking for wounds, for blood, for any sign of damage. I'm fine. I'm okay. Elena grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. I'm okay, Kieran. He pulled her against him with bruising intensity, his whole body shaking. When I saw that gun pointed at you, his voice broke. Elena, I can't lose you. Not when I've just found you. You won't, Elena whispered against his chest. I'm not going anywhere. We need to move, Donovan said, approaching with Sasha. These men will wake up eventually and more might come. We take the boy to Sarah, get him stabilized. He looked at Elena. You did well. Brave but reckless. Tyler's alive because of you. What about them? Elena gestured to the unconscious hunters. We'll wipe their electronics, scatter their equipment, and leave them tied up for local authorities. They'll have nothing but a story about being attacked by wild animals, which technically is true. Donovan's smile was cold. Their superiors might suspect differently, but without proof, they can't act. As they gathered Tyler and prepared to retreat deeper into the territory, Elena realized something profound had shifted. She'd stopped being a guest, an outsider, someone to be protected or tolerated. She'd become part of the pack, and looking at Kieran's face, seeing the fierce pride and love there, she knew there was no going back. Not that she wanted to. This was her home now. These were her people, and she would fight to protect them, just as they'd fought to protect her.